Hi, and welcome to video 5 of our first module. In this video, we're going to walk through doing your own first R Markdown. So this will require you to stop and pause the video and try things out for yourself. But I'm just going to show you how we're going to open an R Markdown. So we're going to come up here to File, and we're going to pick New File, and we're going to pick an R Markdown. And this will ask us for a title. So let's just go My First RMD. And we pick what format we want. Right now I'm just going to do HTML. Well, let's do Word, because you're going to have to do one into Word for your homework. So let's do Word. And so you'll see the title I gave it comes up here in the YAML header, along with my name and the today's date, and then it's going to be output as a Word document. Now, it comes up with a template. So it already has some things here, so I can just knit this and see what happens. So if I just knit the document, then it's going to ask me, okay, what's the name of the file? So I'm just going to call it First RMD. Okay, and I'll save that. And when I do that, you will see what's happening. It opens up this R Markdown panel up here. And it should be knitting the document into that R Markdown panel. So you'll see some commands get executed there, and assuming there are no issues, and if you just have the template, there shouldn't be. And what should happen is you should have the document pop up into Word. So you can see the title and author and so forth, and then you can see this was a header level 2 for R Markdown, and see what that looks like. And this template just shows you some of the things you can do with R Markdown. So there's text, there's a link, and then there's a bold, and then this now, let's look at what's happening here with this first thing. We have our chunk, the name of the chunk is called Cars, and it is going to produce the summary of the built-in data set Cars. So you see when it knits this document, what happens is it echoes the command, summary of Cars, and then shows the results of executing that command. Now, I can also embed plots. So here I've called this chunk pressure. Now I've set echo equals false. That means it's not going to echo this command, plot of pressure, but it will evaluate it and produce the results of that. So this is doing a plot of the pressure as a function of temperature. So you can see how what's happening is my text and my code and my plots all get knitted together into one very professional looking document. Now, let's go in and try just to set up our own R Markdown. So here is, let's just erase all this, and let's start it with saying heading for my, let's make it more like we're going to do for our projects. Let's make this first one intro, and here are the questions I want to answer in my project. I got my data set here, and then we will have a code chunk, and I'll maybe call this first one get data, and here I'll have wherever my data is coming from, and then I will end my code chunk. So maybe I'm just going to look at the Cars data set, and then after that let's do another analysis, and here is where I analyze and visualize my data set. And then here you would put your plots. Okay, so try this and just try knitting your first R Markdown document. and be sure that it knits when you get done. Okay, so it should knit just fine. So do that and look at the files that get generated. Then I want you to know there's certain things that you always do in R Markdown. You're going to use relative and not absolute paths. Remember, we want this to be reproducible by anybody, so you don't want things that go directly to your directory. So you don't want C:// that kind of stuff. So if you do the .. that's going to go up one level in your folder structure. If you do / and then data and then the file name, this will access file name in the data folder of your current directory. So whatever folder you're currently in. So anytime you're doing an assignment, you always want echo equals true. So you want to show any code that for anything you're turning in. If you're using lines to debug your code, you can just comment those out and leave them in your code in case you need to uncomment them later. You're going to always include your test cases and their output. And at the very end, you're going to put a code chunk, and the command you're going to put in that chunk is just session info with the parentheses after it. What this will do is it will tell you, make a record of all the packages that you used and what level they were, so what release level they were, so that you can reproduce the things later. Things to never do in an R Markdown. You never set the working directory. This is considered very impolite. You never install packages. So you want to have any packages that you're using libraried in at the very beginning of your R Markdown document so people can see what all packages you're going to use. Some helpful tips. Name your code chunks. You'll notice in mine I named them. Each name has to be unique, but give them names so you can tell if you have trouble with your knitting where the error occurred. Knit frequently. So once you do a few things to your code or to your document, go ahead and reknit it. Make sure there's still no problem. Also, a lot of times when I'm developing something, I will put my commands in the console first, and then I will put them in the code chunks. So, for instance, let me show you how that works. So if I'm trying something out, right? And I like it, and I want to use it, and I've tried out a bunch of stuff here, then I can go from here, and I can simply, let me go up here where I would want to put the code, and I do to source, and it copies the command from the history into the source. So once you have your code running in the console and doing what you want, then you can copy it into the source. This way you won't have trouble debugging your source. The other thing, if you have an assignment to turn in and you cannot get it to knit, then in the problem chunk, you can set the chunk option eval equals false. And then it won't evaluate that chunk, but I can see that you still did some of the work and maybe help you with how to debug it. Now, here's your first exercise, is to write an R Markdown to create a document including these things, and then knit your document into both a .doc and a PDF, and upload all three, the RMD, the PDF, and the .doc files to Blackboard. This concludes our first module. Next time we'll come back and we'll start on functions and programming.